Hi, happy Saturday. So we are on day 6 already of the 10-day sugar detox. So if you started Monday, you are over halfway there. So I hope that things are going great. So there was a question last night, and I really got to thinking about it, and it was about, if you work somewhere that is full of temptations. The example was Dunkin' Donuts, and I was like, wow, I imagine that's really hard. And so I really got to thinking about that, and I wanted to kind of give you some ideas, even if you're not working at Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, I feel like, we're everywhere there's temptation. If you work in an office, people are bringing in stuff all the time. If you've got kids, there's always junk food in the house. You name it. Like there's stuff that is unhealthy and full of sugar all over the place. And if you're somebody who really loves sugar and if you're addicted to sugar, then that makes it like just doubly hard to cut it out of your diet. So I came up with a couple of suggestions if this sounds like you to kind of start getting it under control. So one is set some parameters for yourself. So think of it as kind of like eating rules and priorities. I've talked about if you want to cut sugar out, not to think of it as taking something away, but getting the opportunity to add new things in. And so that's like trying new recipes, getting to accomplish something by saying, I'm going to eat X number of salads this week. I'm going to eat, have X number of smoothies this week. And so instead of thinking about what you can't have, thinking about what you can have and really setting it up as something that you get to accomplish. It just completely changes your mindset when you do it. And so point number two is you've got to get your mindset right. What it really comes down to is you've got to commit to it, and then you've got to set yourself up to be successful around that. But there's a saying that health really it starts 80% in the kitchen and is 20% exercise, but it is 100% up here. You've got to be committed to it. You've got to have your head on straight. You've got to believe that you can do it. And so, if you're working somewhere where there's loads of temptations or, there's stuff in your house, I have a 6-year-old. We've had just loads of candy around the house. And I don't even really like candy, but I did find myself eating a little bit of it over Christmas. And I was like, why am I doing this? It was just because it was like there. And, I didn't want to be the lame mom who's like, no, I'm not going to eat that. And so, I did have a little bit. And then after I was like, I really don't want this anymore. And so once you cut it out for a while, your brain is just going to be like, I don't really need this. And it's not really that appealing to me. And so, that said, especially if you have young kids, what we do at our house is, Halloween, for example, that's when it all starts, right? We let her kind of, eat as much as she wants in the evening, and then she can have one piece a day after that. She gets a treat every night. And in my head, that is her candy. I do not graze on her candy because that's hers. And so I've just kind of made that kind of line in the sand for myself of I'm not going to steal candy from babies. um, but that's hers and it's not for me. If I want something, I need to go buy it specifically for myself and then hide it and it's mine. And that doesn't often happen because I don't think about it anymore. There was a time in my life where it was kind of all I thought about. But so that's, keep in your mind too that if you're addicted to sugar, once you cut it out and once you get it out of your system, you really do get to start over and you're not going to think about it as much anymore. If you can just really get over that hump of that first detox and make sure that you're set up, like I said, you're having these eating priorities, kind of drawing some lines in the sand for yourself of what you feel like is acceptable and not acceptable for your overall health. And then, clean out your pantry, and your resources that in the guide, there's a big section about that. But personally, I don't keep potato chips in my house because I will eat all of them. And I know I will, and so I don't buy them. I certainly have them on occasion, we're at a kid's birthday party or, whatever, but I don't keep them in my house because I know I will eat all of them. I will open a bag and not be able to stop myself. And so, just not keeping that kind of stuff in your house is whatever your weakness is, just don't keep it in the house. You can have it on occasion, you can have it as a treat. And then, like that said, like allow yourself to indulge occasionally. Like you don't, this is not black and white. I think we get into really black and white thinking when we start talking about losing weight because then the word dieting comes up. And one mindset shift you might want to make for yourself is that diet is not a verb. Get that kind of, just make that shift for yourself that it's a noun. Like it's the thing that we do. A diet is not something that you are actively doing to try to accomplish an end unless that is longevity. And so if you want to lose weight, really, making these small changes, like starting with sugar and saying, okay, well, I'm going to change my relationship with sugar. And then when you feel comfortable with that, okay, well, now I'm going to, incorporate regular, body weight exercise or something. So making these small changes for yourself. And then, occasionally you can indulge. And so, back to that 80-20 rule of, if you're eating well 80% of the time. I was talking to a colleague about this yesterday. If you're eating well 80% of the time, you can let slip that 20%. But especially as you're starting out, because we always talk about everything in moderation, like what does that mean? That is not a measurable outcome and a measurable way of doing things. And so for yourself, you could think about, okay, how many meals do you have a week? 21 meals. And so, if you want to have one cheat meal, quote unquote, a week, like you're still going to be okay. That's not going to undo all the progress you had. But you have to make sure that you're committing to the next day to going back to the way that is a healthy way of eating. And so, lastly, if you're in a situation where like there's constant sweets at the office or you're working in a pastry shop or you get unlimited donuts or whatever it is, draw a hard line for yourself in the sand and say, okay, I can have one donut a week. I can have one crazy coffee a week. And, maybe you can do that at the same time and that's fine. But to keep yourself from having that temptation when you go into work is the hard part. And so drawing that line for yourself in the stand and then making sure that you're eating lots of protein, lots of fiber, lots of good fats, lots of fruits and veggies so that when you go into that situation, you're not hungry. You already feel satiated. And if you're not regularly ingesting sugar, once you put that sugar in your mouth, especially after you do a detox and really get out of your system, it's going to feel really different. Like you're not going to want it. You might like get halfway through your donut and be like, I think I'm done. This is not the way I imagined it was going to be. Because once we start eating differently, whatever that is, like whatever we're eating consistently is what our body is going to crave. And so when you're eating a lot of sugar, a lot of processed carbs consistently, your brain's like, well, that's what I need because that's what we're eating. But if you make that shift to eating lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, lots of protein, lots of fiber, that's what your body's going to want. It's not going to want that donut and that coffee anymore. It's going to want what you regularly eat, which is the good, nourishing stuff. So I hope that's helpful. I will be back on Monday, taking Sunday off, and keep at it. And we're in the home stretch, y'all. So, all right, I will talk to y'all Monday. Have a lovely rest of your weekend.